225, getting into our final topic here in hour one. Big matchup yesterday, Liverpool and Man City. Ryan, I know that you made a video on that one too shortly afterwards, but Erling Haaland kept Man City alive in the Premier League title race on that Sunday night game with a penalty winner to defeat Liverpool 2-1 at Anfield. It was filled with a lot of different things. Obviously, the comeback was great. I felt like that PK for Liverpool was just wasted. This is one of the sickest goals I've seen all year, and it was
Yeah, I
late
would
in that
agree.
game. They should have been able to close it out, man. They should have been able to close it out because the sting of that PK doesn't really land if you don't win that game. But Holland just continues to show he's one of the best. He's a straight up superstar, and helped keep them in the title race with that match. But what were your biggest takeaways from watching those two?
Um, that the Man City agenda is live and well. I mean, that PK,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that PK not given many times based on other games. But when it comes to Man City, they always get the benefit of the doubt, which is always weird. But no, if I'm watching it, and Man City, they're also just a team of champions. It's another sign of champions for them. They've shown that they've won it time and time again. I mean, if they lose that game or drop points, you're looking at an eight. If they tie, it's an 8 point deficit for them. If they lose, it's a 9 point. But it's 6 points right now, and Arsenal and City still have to play each other with 13 games to go. But it's just another sign of them. They didn't play well. They went to Anfield, and there's really got to be some questions about Arne Slot. 550 million plus and can't get it done. Not even in the top four. But no, he's gotta get things done. And for Man City, like, I hate it that they continue to find ways to win. They're still in the title race and they haven't played well, like up to the City standard, I should say, for this last couple of months and quite frankly the whole season. Like the Man City standard is,
Yeah.
win out of 20 games, your first 19 games, you win like 17 of them. That's kind of just the standard, and they have struggled in terms of that aspect in trying to get to that standard. And they're just a very good team. They're a very deep team. Do I think that PK was a PK? Yeah, but if that PK is given, then there should be a lot of other PKs given, especially when it comes to Arsenal versus Man City. Weird how that works. PGMOL. That's just weird how that works. But if
Yeah.
I'm watching it, that free kick, that knuckle from Zaboslai, unbelievable goal. But that just that kind of sums up Liverpool's season. It's that they score a crazy goal like that, and it comes from a free kick because they can't score really in the run of play sometimes, and then they choke it away at the
Yeah.
end because their defense, their backline struggles at times. And you could
Yeah.
arguably say if Mark Gahey's red card should have been a red card, and I think it should have been because it's a last man back and you pull Salah down just outside the box. That should have been a red card. But it's just weird that sometimes everyone kind of blames the refs for lots of calls and everything. But if we're being honest, they're there to make the story and the overall experience a little bit better. Like, I remember watching the Michigan-Nebraska game at Chrysler, and there was like 10 missed calls against Nebraska. But I'm sitting there, and I think back to myself, I'm like, well, Nebraska has a short bench. If you call those fouls on the bigs, then it just becomes a blowout. But then you made it a 2 point game in the end, and it's a great finish. But if we don't call these for Man City, then the title race, Arsenal kind of just runs away with it. But now it's a 6 point difference. They still play each other. So the finish has got to be pretty epic. So, no, I think refs are kind of doing their thing.
So
But my takeaway would
you
be
think
Man City's
these
back in it.
refs are directed to create parity in
Have
the
you
league?
heard the VAR conversations? There's that
Yeah.
penalty I have seen for Arsenal not given twice this year because the goalie has a right to the ball. Then if that's the case and the same officiating crew that has said that, the same VAR ref, the same ref has said that, then that's not a PK. But for Man City, who all of a sudden were sitting there like, wow. So if they tie this game, it's an 8 point difference. But if they win, it's a 6 point difference. But yeah, let's give it because the goalie doesn't have the right to the ball. It's weird. It's just weird how that works because that same ref said the goalie has a right to the ball months ago, but all of a sudden in this game he's like, well, that's a PK because He completely wipes out. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, that doesn't
Hmm.
make sense to me. If that's the
Hmm.
case, then that's not a PK. If that one months ago was not a PK, and the one a couple of years ago is not a PK, the same situation, then that's not a PK yesterday. Obviously, the Allison misjudges it. Obviously, he wipes out Nunez, or I believe that's who he wiped out there. But you can't call that a PK if the one back in October is not a PK and the one a couple of years ago isn't a PK. Like, it doesn't make sense. And obviously, Arsenal's not the only example of this. There's much other examples and other teams that have this, because this happens on a weekly basis. But in that game, Man City was given the benefit of the doubt a handful of times. Shout out Mark Gay, and now shout out the PK.
Yeah, the VAR has been fascinating ever since bringing it on.
Everyone just wants
The
consistency. That's all everyone
technology,
wants.
yeah,
Like,
and
everyone
so
just wants is
for
consistency,
you,
and they're not consistent.
yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, does any of that come down to the human factor though, in your mind, interpretation of what's going on? Because that could also play a role. But I just think it's interesting the angle that you're taking, that this is something that is almost kind of coming from the top in the Premier League.
Oh, if you're in charge of a sports league, you're a commissioner. Like, everyone says that the NFL is scripted and all this and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Would you just want a team to just run away eventually with the league title, whatever league it is, whether that's soccer, basketball, football? No, you don't. You want it to come down to the end every single time. That's why people love Survival Sunday or Championship Sunday so much in the Premier League, because many things can happen, and it comes down to the final game, the final weekend. And we saw that, let's see, Arsenal had it a couple years with City. City won it. Then you had Liverpool and City handful of times, and ultimately the most
yeah,
overrated Premier League moment of all time, the Aguero goal. That's what happened. And why do I say that's overrated? Because QPR sold the damn game. That's why it's overrated. QPR sold it. They just gave up when they realized then they realized they were safe. They just gave the game away. So you can't say that's a great
yeah.
moment. But yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, everything. Like, I remember hearing Peter Drury, the greatest soccer commentator of all time. He talked about, he was asked, like, do you root for certain teams? Like, was there ever a team that, like, as a kid that you always rooted for? And he's like, I root for the story. I root for the storylines. And he's like, ultimately, if I have a good story, then that's all I care about, because that's what people are tuning into. Because you can't
Yeah,
have a league where Arsenal runs away with the league by 20 points. No one's going to watch that. Like, last year was so boring because Liverpool ran away with it. Like, in the last month, no one was truly watching it for anything unless your team was fighting a relegation battle. But, my viewing experience at that time was like, I could care less, because there's no point in playing for anything. We already had the top four. We can't win the title.
yeah,
So there's no point in me watching that. I'd much rather spend my Saturday and Sunday mornings, afternoons doing something way better than that, than just
yeah,
watching
yeah,
Premier League game that doesn't mean anything. Like, I remember
yep.
I was like the Liverpool Arsenal game last year at Anfield at the end. Like, my cousin and I are, big fans of each, and like, I'm supposed to be hyped for that game. Him and I are supposed to be hyped for it, but we looked at each other and we're like, dude, this game is stupid. Like, there's no point of playing it. And ultimately, it was a good game in the end. Just kind of watching back on some highlights, but no, it doesn't matter. So what's going to happen is, Man City doesn't get that penalty. They most likely tie. You're looking at an 8-point gap between the number 1 and number 2. And Aston Villa is just falling off anyway. I think they're down like 10 points now from the top. But a couple weeks ago, they were within a game of being top. So, yeah, you have to make a good story. So what do? You put the team that hasn't won a title in 20 plus years, number 1, who has a history of bottling it, and you put the team that wins it, I think 7 out of the last 8 years. You keep them in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
yeah.
going to keep that up, and you're going to create that story. You're going to constantly see people that don't even root for the teams are going to
With
start tuning into all
arguably,
these games.
with arguably your biggest star too, in Erling Haaland, and so you put him in the game too. So, and man, he was a surprise. He was pretty much out of the picture until the 84th minute, and then all of a sudden knows how to take over a game late. Like, it's crazy to
That's the
see that even on a
difference.
bad even on a bad day, he can still take over when he needs to. I know, obviously, you think that but wouldn't shock me at all if they would want to see him in a position like that and still in a title race. So, yeah, but just a wild finish. I think it's natural to speculate, though. I mean, if it happens elsewhere, it can happen here, and that's
this
the
isn't
thing
the
that,
only
like,
example of this. This happens all
yeah,
the time with
yeah,
City for whatever reason. It's same with Real Madrid and Barcelona over the years. There's
yep,
so many questionable calls. Like there was, gosh, what was it? I think it was a Champions League semifinal back in like the early 2010s, and you had prime Barca against Chelsea, and like Chelsea was kind of up and coming in terms of the Champions League, and there were 3 stonewall PKs for Chelsea that weren't awarded, and they ultimately lost it. And you had Didier Drogba running to the camera after the game saying, "It's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged." And then, like, yeah, and it happens all the time. The best teams get the benefit of the doubt. Like, look at Mahomes for all those years. Look at Tom Brady for all those years. Like, you telling me that there's a questionable call in the World Series or the playoffs that might, go against the Dodgers? You're telling me they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt? No, they're 100% going to get the benefit of the doubt. Even if for like
yep,
a split second in the Game 7 of the World Series where I forgot who it was, the Blue Jays runner that, was out at home plate to throw it at the plate. If that's even if
oh
there's
yeah,
like a split
yep,
second where the Blue Jays player might have had the advantage, no, that the benefit is still going to the Dodgers because it's the Dodgers. They want them to win. It makes for the stories and it makes for the most money.
Big brands get their way.
That's why they always
so
say
I think,
everything's scripted. Well, I don't
yeah,
necessarily believe that, but you got to think certain things have to go certain teams' ways, because if you look at it, like, what brings in the most money? Like the cheat. Like, if we're talking, like, I know I put this in the rundown for the next show. Like, do you have to have a dynasty in the like a dynasty team in the Super Bowl? Kind of, because that's what people tune into. They either want to see greatness, or they want to see the dynasty fall. That's
yeah,
basically what it boils down to.
yeah. That's fair. Let's get into that a little bit on the other side. Coming up, our all sports portion of Inside the Game. We have hit the 10 o'clock hour. Before we get there, though, Manchester City soccer camps are a proud sponsor of the National Soccer Network, bringing world-class training inspired by Man City's global football philosophy to players across the United States. Open to boys and girls of all skill levels, these camps focus on technical development, decision-making, and playing the game the City way. Right now, you can save $30 on registration by using promo code MCNSN30. Again, that's MCNSN30. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Find a camp near you, usacamps.mancity.com.